Forward to the class. Good evening, everyone. We have a small group tonight. I heard maybe the reason to do that is because of the Seahawks playing. You watch the Seahawks game. It's not us. Again, welcome to tonight. Is lessons my children taught me. And I'm going, well, Rob is out today, so I'm going to lead us again in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could all please stand and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barbara, before we move on, let's make sure Celia can actually hear us.
Okay, Celia, can you hear us? Yes, perfect. There's been a few changes I want to go over really quick. Actually, excuse me, just the Toastmaster who will tell us all about those changes. He's going to do all the roles. Please welcome our Toastmaster for the evening, Vicki Patterson.
All right, thank you so much. Good to see you. So as Barbara said, our meeting theme is lessons my children taught me. And oh my goodness, my children are still teaching me lessons, even though they are adults. They don't like me to call them my children anymore because it makes them kind of that they're, young, but now they are teaching me lessons all the time. And my grandsons are teaching me lessons as well, which I just love. We do have some changes, as Barbara said. They are going to be, Kathleen will be our timer as well as our general evaluator. And Celia, you're going to be grammarian, is that correct? All right, wonderful. And Barbara has stepped in to be eye counter. So those are our changes. We do have one speech tonight and our evaluator. And we have our table topics. Mistress again is Pat. I'm looking forward to hearing all about those. Let's see, is there anything else that I need to say right now? I believe that I have talked about the theme and all of the changes. Does anybody have a joke of the day? Oh, Pat does. All right. Woo. Okay, come on up.
Since the thing has to do with children, I found this. Here's the story. A wife invited some people to dinner. At the table, she turned to their 6-year-old daughter and said, "Would you like to say the blessing?" "I wouldn't know what to say," the girl replied. "Well, just say what you hear mommy say," the wife answered. The daughter bowed her head and said, "Lord, why on earth did I invite all these people to dinner?"
Oh, thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to call up our general evaluator who will be telling what she'll be doing as well as calling on her team. Kathleen.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be our general evaluator tonight. In that role, I primarily will be evaluating the meeting overall. Why do we do that? Just because it is always nice to improve, even though we are so close to perfect. In addition, I have a crack team that is joining me, and the first person I'm going to introduce is our speech evaluator number 1, Lloyd Smith.
Thank you, Kathleen. Tonight, Selena will be big surprise for Celia. Celia will be giving a speech. No, Selena will be giving a speech. This is a level 2 project called Understanding Your Communication Styles, right? Okay. And this is an interesting project. All of you will get a chance to do this because it's required for most of the level 2s. It really makes you look into what you're doing yourself. As it says here, the purpose of this project is for the member to learn about different communication styles and identify his or her primary style, and then to share the impact of his or her style on others. There are many, many different ways to do that, and it'll be interesting to see what Selena decides to do. The speech is 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Evaluator. Numero uno. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce myself as the timer. In my role as timer, I will make a special effort to keep an eye on my phone, keep track of the time. We have a number of one speech, but a number of table topics. The one speech we have is 5 to 7 minutes. At 5 minutes, I will hold up the green. At 6 minutes, the yellow. And at 7 minutes, the red. For our table topics, which are, the target is 2 minutes. At 1 minute, green, 1.5 yellow, and 2 red. We also have our evaluator presentation. 3 minutes?
2 to 3.
2 to 3 minutes. Thank you. At 2 minutes, the green. At 2.5, the yellow, and at 3 minutes, the red. The reason we care about timing is because we all know what it's like to go somewhere and hear someone speak on and on and on. We can learn that lesson here and do that. Now, let's move on to our next team member. Celia, we haven't met before, but could you share with us your grammarian role?
Hi, and good evening. Tonight I'll be your grammarian, and I will share with you a word of the day, as well as be listening to folks' use of grammar, either in interesting and new ways, or perhaps in ways that shouldn't be used. I had a fancy poster here of my word of the day, and I realized that it would end up being backwards when I showed it to you. So, or is it?
No, it isn't.
Oh, okay. So the word, which you can't see very well, I apologize. Maybe if I turn like this, is contemporaneous. This is a word that I heard today several times during a virtual meeting. And I hadn't heard it before. And so it interested me. And the word is very much like the word contemporary. It's the same root, and it means basically the same thing, happening or existing at the same time. An example might be, please ensure that your comments on the document are contemporaneous with the time that you entered the comment. That's my best shot at an example for you. Contemporaneous. I wish I could hang it up somewhere so you can be reminded of it. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you, Madam Grammarian. Our next team member will contemporaneously be counting the ahs and filler words at the same time that Celia will be monitoring our grammar. Welcome, Barbara, counter.
Celia, I just wanted to point out you're still sideways to us. Okay, there you are. Okay. Thanks, Madam Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. The purpose of the counter is to note words and sounds that are used as a crutch or pause fillers by anyone who speaks. So during the meeting, I will listen for overused words, including well, one of my favorites to use, so, and like, but, and repeats, and all others. At the end of the meeting, I will give my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam counter. A marvelous team. Thank you all for volunteering. I am going to turn this over now to our Toastmaster, who will introduce our first speech.
Thank you very much. It's not always what you say, but how you say it that can have the biggest impact on human relationships. And at the end of the day, those relationships are arguably more important to maintain than absolute control of a situation. Most of us know our communication styles and the need to adjust to accommodate others. But how do we keep up the effort when sleep deprivation, extreme weather conditions, and fatigue come into play? This speech is mostly successful example of implementing strategies for civil conversations in the midst of chaos. Please help me welcome Selena Danko and the Tower of Babel leading through chaos.
Note or demo feedback. Pause 1 minute. Thanks. Thank you, Selena, for dinner.
Oh, no worries. Are we ready?
Mhm.
8,000 feet, 8,000 ideas, 60 hours of sleep deprivation. Most of you have probably been through the Winco checkout line, the self-checkout line. They have the volume turned up as high as they possibly can for the little assistant that helps you through. And everybody's at a different stage of that. So if there are 6 people in line at the Winco checkout, self-checkout line, everyone is getting a different version of the instructions equally as loudly. So throw in being at 8,000 feet for 60 hours without more than 4 hours of sleep, a blizzard in the forecast, 50-mile-an-hour winds, and having to plan for all of that. And that's what mile 208 of the Moab 240 is like. I'm the aid station captain for that particular section of this race that involves thousands of feet of elevation gain for these runners. I had to communicate as the aid station captain with volunteers from all different walks of life, most of whom I had not met until arriving at our station. So it was an exercise in communication. And some of those communication tactics I learned from my own children, because it's a little bit chaos when you have 3 children and they're all telling you this a different version of a story that they have some sort of grievance over. So it's a little bit what I would imagine the Tower of Babel. You're getting lots of information thrown at you all at once, and you have to somehow articulate how to keep this aid station going in the midst of all of that. So here are 3 strategies that I used for my communication style to run this aid station. And I'm going to tell it to you in 3 different stories. So first of all, it's really important to keep in mind the objective, keeping your eyes on that gold standard. And that gold standard is that every runner leaves our aid station with a full belly, with all of their mandatory equipment and a smile on their face. That was the goal. Sometimes that involved reminding the mile-long line of cars on the side of the road and the drivers inside of them that they can't be there because the runners are being pushed out into the middle of the road. That was in the middle of the night, knocking on doors, car windows, every single one of them. My direct style of communication, you need to move your car right now. That's not what I said to them. This is what I'm observing, I said to them. The runners are being forced into the middle of this paved road and there are cars going by at 30 to 40 miles per hour. Your vehicle is putting them in danger. Could you think about another way of helping this race besides parking right here? They all moved and they happily moved. Another example of a communication tactic that you can use to avoid being too direct and having people annoyed with you is to take a deep breath. And that taking a deep breath actually helps your brain calm down a little bit and avoid the knee-jerk conversation. I had a volunteer come to me and we need to fire the people at the road. They are not doing their job. They're not doing anything. I took a deep breath. We can't afford to fire anyone. We're all volunteers. We're volunteering our time. If we fire them, there won't be anybody at the road at all to help people in. And really the problem with the people at the road is that they really didn't want to have to go and talk to all those people in the cars that were parked and endangering the runners because they didn't want that confrontation. That was my job. So I took a deep breath and I made that walk and I talked to those people and it helped the situation. Throughout the 3 days we were up at this aid station, there were some opportunities for comic relief. We had 6 inches of snow. We had that blizzard. We had those wind gusts. We had pop-up tents that were full of snow. It had to come off. The frame was literally bending on these pop-up tents. Meanwhile, we're cooking food. We're cooking hamburgers. We're asking runners, do you want cheese on that hamburger? Do you want ketchup on that hamburger? Do you want vegan soup or do you want soup with meat in it? We're continuing to do all of this. And I talked to the ham radio guys because whenever there was an unorthodox job, I reached out to them. The email for one of them is, damn it, Dave. And that's because you know he's going to get the job done. You're just not sure what that performance is actually going to look like. So Dave, I need your help. We need to get this snow off of our tents. And I knew he was going to accomplish this task with great focus. 5 minutes later, I forgot about the snow because I'm doing ketchup and mustard and communicating with runners, cooking hamburgers, cooking pancakes, whatever it is they need. Dave emerges from a tent with something that looks a little bit like a log. It was tent insulation and still in its packaging. It's about this long and it's about this big around. It's going to become a battering ram for the snow. Meanwhile, we have runners standing around the outside of the tent, filling up their little water bottles. It's like everyone needs to stand clear while we get the snow off the tent. Most of them listened. Except the one person who was bending over and didn't quite hear. And then here comes the snow. Woo! Cascading down his back. And he just turned around and just walked away. Did not say a word. But stepping back from that moment with this chaos of snow flying everywhere, runners just continuing to shout out their orders, was a very funny situation. It was hilarious. Snow was falling down people's backs. Runners were continuing to make their orders for hamburgers with cheese or ketchup. We're still serving soup, but we're also laughing at ourselves at the same time. We made laughter work. We made taking a deep breath work. And we kept our eye on the prize of getting all those runners out safely and happily. But there was a time when it didn't work. And that was when we were putting our runners in the back of a U-Haul truck for sleeping. And it was requested that we do something to keep them warmer. I happened to be taking a nap in the back of that U-Haul truck at the time that one of the volunteers was installing a propane heater into the back of the truck. With the door was closed, there was a blanket covering. So think about CO2 poisoning. I'd had about 2 hours of sleep. This heater is getting installed. And I said, no, we're not doing that. Not any rationale, no, we're not doing that. But I could have taken a deep breath. I could have laughed at the situation. I could have kept my eye on the prize, but at the time I was just thinking about staying alive. And I lost track of all of those different strategies. I had to go back and explain to her later because I drove to Moab with her and I had to drive back with her why we weren't going to have a propane heater in the back of a closed vehicle. So again, when in your communication styles, taking a deep breath really helps. Maintaining a sense of humor and keeping an eye on your objective are really important strategies to use. Thank you. Now I'm gonna hat here the rest of the evening.
Thank you. Timer, may we have 1 minute, please?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'll grab all the others.
I take bribes, totally.
What was that?
I definitely take bribes.
Oh, good.
Especially this talker, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, that's 1 minute.
All right, go ahead and finish up your sentences. It is my pleasure to introduce Pat, who will be leading us in table topics this evening. Woo!
Since our theme tonight had to do with children, I chose questions for table topics that are contemporaneous with childhood. Now, as you are well aware, table topics is the opportunity for some spontaneous speech making. Allows you to think on your feet, organize your thoughts, and express them to the larger group in hopefully a coherent way. So remember, the focus is going to be on childhood. Let me see. Kathleen, if you could be any animal, what would it be and why? If you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
Thank you, Madam. Table topics.
Mhm.
If I could be any animal, what would it be? I would be an elephant. I would be an elephant because they're very big and lots of other animals and people are afraid of them. I would be an elephant in Africa. I could own my whole area with the rest of my elephant tribe. I would have my husband elephant and my baby elephants, and maybe some grandbaby elephants. We would hang out together, taking our spouts and dipping them in water and spraying them on each other and having fun doing that. And then we would go stomping through the Sahara or wherever we are, scaring people off. Then we would go to dinner by just lifting our trunks up and pulling something off of the trees, perhaps even sharing it with others who were around us. The more I think about it, the more I like the life of an elephant. Oh, I want to have some tusks as well. Long white tusks. My final thought is I definitely want to be in one of those protected areas where no one can come and shake me with the rest of my family. Elephant, that is it, my future.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Lloyd, if you could be any flavor of ice cream, what flavor would you be and why? If you could be any flavor of ice cream, what flavor would you be and why?
Thank you, Table Topics Master. I was thinking about that this morning, actually, when I was shopping with Fred Meyer's. I went by their really long, if you've been in Fred Meyer, you know they have, it seems like hundreds of feet of ice cream in there. And there are some very odd ice cream flavors. Not odd like broccoli or something like that, but just about. And the oddest one I saw, or the most disgusting one I saw, was pumpkin spice. And they're saying pumpkin and ice cream just don't seem to go well together. I mean, they could be mixed together, obviously, but that would be a bad surprise for a lot of people, particularly kids, I would think, you know. Although not as bad as, say, broccoli in spring. But if I could choose a flavor, I think I'm thinking of the flavors I like, but I'm not positive I want to be one of those flavors. But in any event, I think I'd probably go with Rocky Road. Rocky Road ice cream has lots of surprises in it. And they can be good surprises or bad surprises, depending on how hard those little nuts and whatnot are in there. But I think I would go with Rocky Road just because it would be interesting to see what happens when people eat it.
Thank you, thank you. Celia, who is your favorite cartoon character and why?
Thank you, Table Topics Master. My favorite cartoon character is probably Fred Flintstone. I liked the way that he looked, his chubby and rather linear features, I guess you could call them. There wasn't a lot of detail in his features. I liked his mannerisms. They were goofy. I also liked the rest of his family too, although I would have said that I preferred his wife, but I couldn't remember her name, so that's why I chose Fred. I remember Pebbles, but Pebbles wasn't necessarily my favorite. I guess the gist of my statement is that the Flintstones were probably my favorite cartoon, and Fred was the guy that was on the top of my head, so I chose him as being my favorite cartoon character. For some reason, when I was a kid, I wanted to live in the Fred Flintstone era. It just looked like a lot of fun to me. Things seemed pretty simple. The talking and the way they went about their lives was very simple. So Fred Flintstone, he's my favorite. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vicky, what is the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
The strangest thing that I have ever eaten, I think, I've never had anything like escargot. It just doesn't appeal to me to try that. I have combined things that people think are kind of strange though. And one thing that I really like in the summer months is watermelon, but adding a little bit of flavor to it, whether it be some lime, where you take some lime, or balsamic vinegar. Just when you have those two flavors together, it is magical. When I first was introduced to it, I'm like, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, just try it. And so I was adventurous enough to just try it. And I was like, this is really good. I'm surprised that the two flavors really mix together very well. And I'm glad that I did. My former husband who passed away was a chef, and he was always experimenting. And I learned to at least try it. And if I didn't like it, that was okay. But he introduced me to some things. I hated not broccoli, Brussels sprouts. And he said it's because you were introduced to them by just boiling them. My mom would always just boil them. He's like, you roast them. I tried to roast one and I could actually tolerate it. So it was just one of those things. So nothing too wild, but I would say that a lot of people look at me and say, why do you put lime on watermelon? Because it's really good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Barbara, if you could talk in your sleep, what would you say? If you could talk in your sleep, what would you say?
speaking table topics master. If I could talk in my sleep, what would I say? I haven't been known to talk in my sleep. I do snore on occasion. At least that's what my husband has told me. But if I could talk in my sleep, I would have to wonder, is anybody listening? Because that would change the narrative. If I knew somebody was listening and I pretended I was talking in my sleep, I would talk about how my perfect morning would go. That my son would walk over and make me breakfast instead of him coming in, you know, because this is about children. Instead of him coming into my RV and asking me for breakfast. When's breakfast gonna be ready, Mom? I'd like some bacon and 6 eggs, please. I would also mumble on about how it would be great if my husband got up and actually fed the dogs at 5 o'clock in the morning when they demand to be fed. And give them their medication, which has to be done at 6 a.m. So I can sleep in. I might discuss how wonderful it would be if I woke up to clean dishes, the coffee already made. I think that's what I talk about in my sleep.
Thank you, thank you. Selena, what is the one thing you own you wish you did not?
Wow.
The one thing that I own that I wish I did not is a car. My stories of disaster are indeed a subject for comic relief in my family, but they're not so funny to me. In recent memory, I've had a truck break down on the way to one of my adventures in the mountains. It broke down because the oil gauge doesn't work, and I did not know that. And when the alarm went off, but the gauge didn't move, I wasn't sure I should take it seriously or not. I didn't. It broke down. The second car incident I had recently was on a trip back from Moab. And the battery stopped charging, the little light came on. I was tempted to pull out the black electrical tape just to cover up. They say you can do that and the light won't bother you as much. But we decided, well, maybe we should pull over and take a look inside there. The car dies, we can't get it started again. We pull up the hood and there's a little nest on the battery. And I'm like, how did a bird get in there? And then meanwhile, a rat runs across the engine compartment and it just about gave me a heart attack. The third thing that happened to me recently with a vehicle of my own, driving to an event at Lake Wenatchee on Saturday, drove all the way there, as merry as can be. It seemed like the car was driving a little bit funny in the ruts that are covered with the asphalt patching that makes your car kind of drive funny anyway. And I thought, well, that's probably what's going on. I got a flat tire for miles. So that's one thing that I wish I did not own, is a car of my own. I would rather just rent or borrow instead of having all of that responsibility, because I'm obviously not up to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lloyd, who have you met that you wish you had not? Who have you met that you wish you had not?
I've got some names if you need any.
I'm resisting temptation to be cruel, but let me finish this. I was a classroom teacher, high school level, for 26 years. There are dozens of people I really wish I had never met. Not all of them are kids. Some of them are the parents of those kids. The kids are typically okay, but their parents who are some really brass-plated jerks when you get down to it, particularly the attorneys who threaten to sue you because you caught the kid cheating on an assignment or a test or something like that. I had that happen 3 times. But a specific person, I can't think of a specific person I wish I had not met that whose name I'd want to use. Some of those attorneys are still practicing. They could probably come after me if the word got out or something. But I don't know, it's much easier just to try to either evade the people who are unpleasant in your life or figure out how to get along with them than it is to regret having met them. Because after all, once you've met them, you can't unmeet them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Kathleen, what is the meanest thing you've ever said to someone? What is the meanest thing you've ever said to someone?
I go out of my way not to say mean things to people. Probably my children are the most likely victims. I once had a perhaps 2-year-old having a really bad temper tantrum. One of those throwing themselves around the room and screaming and yelling. I'm a little ashamed of myself. I didn't say anything, but I went out to the car and I got the car seat. And I brought the car seat in, put it in the office, which was the closest room. And I grabbed it. Put him in the car seat and I locked him in. He was really angry at me. He kicked so hard, he knocked the whole car seat over. When I came back, I left. I had to take a break. When I came back, the whole car seat was tipped over. He was still screaming. Eventually he calmed down. And I let him out of the car seat. He is still my son. I'm not sure if he remembers that incident. I think I would not bring it back.
Okay, thank you very much. Vicki,
Yes.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
Well, thank you very much. Well, that would depend on who you ask on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm pretty sure that when my kids were teenagers, I would be very low on the scale. I would think that my good friends that are in my circle would probably give me about an 8. But I know that my grandkids are going to give me a 10 next year because we are already talking about our trip to Disneyland. It is going to be their first time going to Disneyland, and I know it will be off the charts. I will be number 10, at least while we're there. Something will happen probably when we get back, but I know that I will be in number 10 because I'm looking forward to sharing that excitement with them. We've already started talking about it and talking about rides, and it's very interesting about how the children teach me and that each one is very different. And I know that there's certain rides that I would get a 0 if I took one of my grandsons on because he just doesn't like loud noises, scary things. But I'm sure if I took him on the Pooh Bear ride, I would get a number 10. So it depends on who you ask. Sometimes a number 2 because I'm just not that cool mom, but I'm a pretty cool grandma. Number 10 then. Back to you.
Very good, thank you very much. Celia, use one word to describe your computer ability. How would you describe your computer ability in just one word? And make it last for 2 minutes.
Thank you. One word to describe my computer ability is proficient. I am a bit above average in my computer abilities as far as I'm concerned. If you ask my kids, they probably would not agree, but we have different proficiencies. My children's proficiencies are centered around social media, gaming, texting, and things like that. Whereas my proficiencies are more centered around useful applications such as Microsoft apps and engineering software, things like that. I believe that for my age, I've kept up rather well in my computer proficiency. But again, it depends on who you ask. If you were to ask a member in our IT department at work, they probably wouldn't be as impressed as I am with myself. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Barbara, how can you tell if someone is a nerd?
Sorry.
Thank you for that question, Table Topics Master. How do I know if somebody is a nerd?
Yes.
Well, that's a big, long story I don't have time for today. When I was first getting into the computer business, I considered myself a nerd, but I was told by a very proficient tech person that I couldn't be a nerd yet. That was a status that I had to earn by being in the computer business for a lot longer than I had been. Okay, I said. 12 years later, I asked, do I get the title of nerd yet? The question is, do I play video games? Can I code a computer from scratch? How about, can I make a computer game? No, I can't do all those things. Well, maybe you're not quite a nerd, but you're kind of techie. Like, all right, so I'm a techie and not a nerd. So in that definition, if somebody's a nerd, tech-wise, because there's all kinds, there's book nerds, there's quilt nerds, there can be all kinds of. So to be a tech nerd, you have to be able to code, game, and work in industry for a very long time. Thank you.
All right, and we have just enough time for Selena to answer this question and be our swan song. How old were you when you had the worst haircut ever, and what style was it?
Thank you for that question, Madam Table Topics Master. Well, that haircut, that worst haircut that I've had in my life is not contemporaneous, I hope. I decided when I was, before I actually went to elementary school and I had peers judging me on how I looked, it was just really up to me. And I discovered I didn't have the greatest taste. I told my mom, I want my hair really, really short, like really short, so that my bangs are just like here, like right here. And I want it, oh, it's just a pain. I would climb trees all the time and I had pitch in my hair. I just cut it all off. So she did. She was tired of having to deal with all that pitch in my hair too. So she cut it all off. I realized it might have not been the best request when the adults in my life started to look at my haircut, because it was passing from winter to spring. So a lot of times I had a hat on, but when the hat came off, Selena, or my nickname at the time was Buddha. Buddha, is that really you? It doesn't look like you. I was really shy at the time, and so I was like that anyway. And then people were looking at me because of my hair, and I was like, it's a practical thing, the pitch and all the climbing trees and the bother of having to comb it. 4 years old, I didn't make that mistake again, especially after I went to elementary school. I cared a little bit about what people thought of me, and I couldn't, in elementary school hide So, yes, that was the worst haircut decision.
All right, thank you, everyone. You were very creative and I hope you enjoyed your experiences. Thank you very much.
Great thoughtful questions. Thank you, Pat. Well, to be contemporaneous, we're going to go into our evaluation process. So please help me welcome Kathleen.
And our Toastmaster. We've had some excellent short speeches tonight and also an excellent longer speech. And here to evaluate that longer speech that was by Selena is Lloyd Smith.
Thank you, Kathleen. This is I think the fourth speech of yours I've evaluated, third or fourth speech. I never a word was wrong about that. Not that I don't like evaluating your speeches, but it's better to get multiple opinions. In any event, this was really a well-done speech. It's interesting to watch the progress you've been making week by week, which is substantial, by the way. It may not seem that way to you, but it does to me. There were several things you excelled at in this speech. One of them was the introduction. It was a very clever introduction that immediately drew the audience in because it was right at the start of the way, not clear what you were talking about. And then it became very clear, but in the meantime, the obvious question was, wow, what's this going to be about? Really well done. Your organization was very strong. You were good at what they call signposting. You said that you told us there were going to be 3 points you were going to make, and then you made your 3 points. Much, somewhat similar to listening to college lecturers. Some profs are so good at signposting, it's easy to make notes. Others, you have to figure out what the heck they're talking about. And it was very easy to understand what you were getting at in your speech. Your gestures were really well done. I don't know if you remember, but your very first speech, you spent the whole speech with your hands clasped. This one, you were very animated, and the gestures weren't just random gestures. They actually matched what you were talking about. Really well done. Your use of notes, much, much better than previously. I still remember that deck of about 15 note cards or so you had for your icebreaker, one card for each word practically, but you had just a single page outline. You're getting better and better at that. It's easier to speak with minimal notes, just the main points, and you're moving in that direction, so that's excellent. What might you want to work on? Transitions from point to point. The transitions were a little abrupt. And I think at the end, that's because you realized you were running short on time a bit, not horrible or anything, but you started to speed up and you just left some things out. Your volume, you have a tendency for your volume to trail off. And that's not such a big thing in the room here. It might be in terms of somebody listening via our OWL deal there. But in a larger crowd, that is a big thing. The trick is not necessarily to be louder, but to project toward the end. And one way to do that is to imagine that the first person in your audience is actually sitting in that chair at the end of the table, and to project so that that person can hear you. Pauses. I think if you had some more pauses in your speech, that would have solved the transition problem. It would have been easier to see what you're going at. And finally, eye contact. It isn't that you were reading the notes. It just seemed like your eye contact would kind of drift down every now and then. And I thought at first you were reading the notes, but that wasn't it, because you were looking at different places. But when you break eye contact with the audience, you break a psychological connection. And it's really important to maintain that psychological connection. To challenge yourself, more speeches. This was your best one yet. You're definitely on an upward trajectory. Nice job on this. Next to you, somebody. Oh, Kathleen.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Evaluator Lloyd Smith. Our next report is from the timer. We have a lot of speeches tonight. I was very busy. I have a lot of times to read out. We'll start with Selena. 8 minutes and 10 seconds on your speech. Then I'll go to Lloyd, and then we'll go into table topics. Lloyd, the evaluation was 3 minutes, 28 seconds. Table topics. My first one, Kathleen, 1 minute, 45 seconds. Lloyd's first was 1 minute, 22. Celia, 1 minute, 42 for her first round. Vicky, 1 minute, 36. Barbara, 1 minute, 31. Selena, 1 minute, 56. Lloyd, your second time around, 1 minute, 14. My second time around, 1 minute, 30. Vicky's second time, 1 minute, 28. Celia, 1 minute, 33. Barbara, 1 minute, 38. And Selena being very consistent at 1 minute and 55 seconds. Nice job. I am pleased to introduce Celia to give our grammarian report.
Thank you, General Evaluator. I caught several people using the word of the day, contemporaneous. Pat used it, as well as you, Kathleen, Selena, and Vicky. I apologize if there were others that used the word that I didn't write down that you did. I didn't hear anybody have any misuse of words. One phrase that stuck out to me was Lloyd's use of brass plated. That just made me chuckle, and I'll probably use that myself. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Grammarian. Our odd counter. Welcome.
General Evaluator. So tonight during the meeting, we actually all did really well. So we all need to give ourselves a round of applause. Kathleen, you had a perfect evening.
Oh.
Selena, I was so enamored with your speech, I did not actually count during your speech, and I apologize for that. You only used like, and you had one repeat in your table topics. Lloyd, just a couple buts. Celia, you were pretty close. You had one so. And Vicky, I caught a couple buts and one repeat. Myself, thank you, Lloyd, for stepping in. I did it well, as well as a like, which I know that's not one of my favorites. And let's see. I'm just looking at to see if I missed anybody. No, Pat, I didn't catch anything for you too. Great. Thank you.
Now, I would like to spend just a minute talking about the meeting overall and evaluating it. The great things about the meeting, it started on time. It was amazing to me. We could set our clock by the start of this meeting. Thank you, Barbara and Lloyd. Everything was set up. The owl was set up so Celia could easily and quickly join us. We rearranged roles quickly and filled our gaps. But those were all excellent things that we did. If we could work on something, there are two things. One is we didn't really use the word of the day. And I think we forgot it. I did. I forgot it until after my second table topics. Maybe next time we could just take out a sheet of paper and write it down and put it somewhere to help us remember. I just forgot about it. It was a good word. It was a word that we could easily have used. I just simply spaced it. The other thing is I miss clapping. Our transitions were kind of half-hearted, and I think we're not clapping anymore because it affects the sound.
The microphone clips.
Right.
When you clap, so there's a gap afterward.
Yes, so I understand why we're not doing that, but we maybe have to come up with some creative ways to be more enthusiastic for our transitions. They were a little lackluster. Overall, though, a very good meeting, especially with all the changes that we had to make at the last minute. And all of the table topics, by the way, I neglected to say this, one of the outstanding things I thought was Pat and how she explained what the table topics master does. And then that you had come up with so many questions that we could fill our time. That was really very excellent.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I am turning this back, I'm guessing, to the president since she's standing right here.
I agree. It was a great meeting overall. I appreciated everybody being here, not at home watching football. And again, great table topics, Pat. Thank you so much. Those are really, really good ones tonight. I will get you out of here a little bit early. It is 4 minutes till end of week. So again, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Sylvia, for logging in. Hope to see you in person sometime. Good night.
Oh my.
I was counting those. I heard all of them that I said. Oh, I read it out again. She's